For example, many of you remember that the space shuttles used ceramic tiles that were made up to make the thermal shield that was actually designed so that the space shuttle, as it's making its rendezvous back into the planet Earth, as obviously as it encounters, huge temperatures, as it's dropping into the atmosphere, and to withstand temperatures of nearly 3,000 degrees, it's coated by 24,000 ceramic tiles. The heating of a space shuttle tile is demonstrated here by this blowtorch, as they're demonstrating the fact that the insulating properties of ceramic is very, very amazing. Now, how many know where ceramic comes from? Comes from what? Clay. Okay, just remember that now. Ceramic plays an important part of our everyday lives, even parts that we can't see and don't pay much attention to. For example, when you get brake pads, many of you know that ceramic brake pads are almost a given now because of the ability that they have to last a lot longer than the old-fashioned brake pads, because they're made out of ceramics. Of course, a spark plug. And you say, well, why are you bringing this? You're going to see why in just a second. It's interesting that a spark plug will produce about 40,000 to 100,000 volts, and then, of course, it's done in such a way and designed in such a way that it can handle that because it has ceramic insulation. You can see right there the arrow's pointing to it, and then, of course, on the very bottom is also what's called a ceramic insert that allows that arch to produce that high voltage. Now, how are they able to do that? They're able to do that by the use of ceramics, and ceramics comes from clay. You say, well, here's another interesting thing. An electronic ceramic capacitor is this thing that many of you will, if you've ever opened up a computer and you've seen what they call the motherboard, and you'll see that they're full of these capacitors. They're all used, and you'll see at the top there just a few different designs of them. They're used to help send forth information. Okay, so what's that all about? Well, everyone look up here for a second. Daniel closes his book with God asking or telling him to do something really weird. He says, I want you to shut the book. I want you to seal the book. Because to be honest with you, Daniel, it ain't going to make a whole lot of sense until the time of the end. And notice that the time of the end has two little dots after that. What's that called? And that means what? Do you remember? It means that what is about to be said will explain what was just said. So he says, oh, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book even to the time of the end. So what's the time of the end? Listen what he says. Many shall run to and fro, knowledge shall be increased. Now that is a distinct generation. That's what Jesus is talking about. But he said, what do you mean, John? How many know that when Adam and Eve wanted to get from point A to point B, how'd they get there? They walked or they rode on beasts of burdens. 2,000 years later, Abraham is told by God to leave Ur of Chaldees and go into the promised land. How did Abraham get from point A to point B? He did exactly what everybody else has been doing, walking and riding on beasts of burden. 2,000 years after that, Jesus is riding in the city of Jerusalem on a donkey. How is Jesus getting around? Well, he's riding on a beast of burden and he's walking. 2,000 years after that, we find settlers coming across the United States of America, coming for the gold rush in California. How'd they get here? They walked, rode on beasts of burden. How many know they didn't fly any cars or fly any airplanes or ride any cars? So they've been doing for thousands of years what everybody else has been doing. Around the turn of the century, there's some guy named Henry Ford started putting out automobiles because he got this idea from a guy who created the horseless carriage. And of course today, average person travels 25,000 miles a year. Why? Most people at 1900s traveled 3,000 miles in a given year, if they even got to travel at all. Well, how many know if you try to get on the highway and you're going into San Francisco, even probably right now, you're going to run into what? Traffic. Why? Because there's people running to and fro. And Titus and I will get back to the airport in Sacramento, and we're going to leave Sacramento, and technically, flying time, we're going to get back to Sacramento in about 4 hours of flight. How many know that 4 hours 100 years ago wouldn't have got you very far? Most of you wouldn't come to church tonight if you had to walk, right? Well, what is happening? You're running to and fro. Some of you have been on the road all day today, going back and forth, and you've done it because you're in a unique generation that's never been on the face of the earth before. Okay? And not only that, but knowledge shall increase. Now, isn't it interesting that the computer came around, and all of a sudden, it's like rockets taking off. If we would have said the internet 20 years ago, people wouldn't know. Web, all you think of a web's a spider thing, you know. We're so advanced at this now, we can, Titus is sitting here, got his iPhone, and he's texting somebody, and they're texting him, and they're on the other part of the country, and they're just, knowledge is just going like nuts. How many understand that? Folks, this is a unique generation. This has never happened before. No generation's ever been in this kind of situation before. Years and years ago, if something happened, it would have taken weeks for you to find out about it. Now, if something happens, you can literally find out within seconds. You can get on the phone and talk to somebody on the other side of the world. As a matter of fact, I actually got to talk to my daughter on the other side of the world today on a cell phone. She just called me on a cell phone. And she called me on, what do they call that thing, Titus? That is not Skype. You called me on Skype. Got on her computer, a little laptop, got connected to the internet with a microphone, doesn't cost hardly anything, and she calls me for like a penny a minute on my cell phone, which is in my pocket. Now, folks, how many know 10 years ago, telling somebody's going to connect to a line and they're going to talk to you on the other side of the world and you're going to have this little tiny phone with you. How many know that? Probably you'd have said, yeah, right. Now, is there something unique about this? All right, now with that being said, scientists are just beginning to tap into the many uses of ceramic. The biggest area we expect to see growth is how it will help us in our life function. It is being used in medical devices that sense our needs and deliver medicine as needed. It's being used in to remove impurities from our drinking water. In recent years, there has been amazing advances in ceramics, which include bioceramics used for making synthetic bones, hips, knees, and shoulders. Ceramics are currently being used to replace diseased heart valves. The health benefits from using ceramic in the medical field are remarkable. A common use for ceramic today is in the dental field, used to make fillings and crowns and veneers and dental implants and brackets used to holding braces in place. And because of the remarkable electronic, mechanic, thermal, optical, and magnetic abilities, ceramic materials has numerous uses. The possibilities of how we use ceramics are literally endless. And by the way, ceramics are made from what? All right. From the medical field to computer technology, ceramic material has and will have a profound effect on how we do things. Ceramics are really changing the way that we live, how long we live, and how well we live. It will make our day-to-day life easier, increase our technology, and help us live long, healthy lives, even when our natural body parts can no longer support us. Now, how many know that's kind of odd and weird that it just so happens that this is showing up in the last times, the latter times? Are you all with me? Is that just a coincidence? Well, let's talk about another thing for a minute. Here we are talking about all these different symbols that are showing up with Europe, and it's just bizarre. And let me just tell you something. God is so cool because He's always a step of everybody ahead of everybody else.